My name is Naomi, and I'm 32 years old. 5 years ago, my sister Cassandra accused me of having an affair with her husband, destroying her marriage. My entire family believed her without question and cut me out of their lives completely. I spent years alone, abandoned by the people who should have loved me most. But last month, I sent one email that changed everything. An email with proof of what really happened. If you're watching this video, drop a comment letting me know where you're from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever been wrongfully accused of something you didn't do. Now let me tell you how the truth finally came to light. I grew up in a small Midwestern town called Maplewood, where everyone knew everyone's business and family reputation meant everything. My parents, Robert and Diana, owned a successful local hardware store and were well respected in the community. We lived in a comfortable 4-bedroom house with a big backyard where we hosted summer barbecues for the extended family every year. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family. But inside our home, there was always an unspoken hierarchy. My older sister Cassandra was the golden child, beautiful, charming, and the center of attention. 3 years older than me, she had glossy chestnut hair that fell in perfect waves, bright green eyes, and the kind of magnetic personality that drew people to her, like moths to a flame. When Cassandra walked into a room, heads turned. When she laughed, everyone wanted to be in on the joke. I, on the other hand, was the quiet one. More studious, less outgoing with plain brown hair, and my father's hazel eyes. Where Cassandra excelled at being the life of the party, I found comfort in books and academic achievement. It wasn't that my parents didn't love me. They did in their way. But Cassandra had a special hold over them, especially our father. She knew exactly how to wrap him around her finger with a tearful look or a well-timed compliment. "Cassie's just more sensitive," my mother would explain when I questioned why my sister got away with breaking rules that I was expected to follow. "We need to handle her carefully." As children, this dynamic played out in countless small ways. When I won the school spelling bee in 4th grade, my parents attended but spent most of the event talking about how Cassandra would be starring in the middle school play the following week. When I made the honor roll semester after semester, it was expected rather than celebrated. But when Cassandra managed to pull her grades up from C's to B's, my parents took the whole family out for a special dinner. "You don't understand how hard Cassie has to work," my father would say when I pointed out the disparity. "Things come easy to you, Naomi." By high school, I had learned to live in Cassandra's shadow. I focused on academics and joined clubs where she had no interest: debate team, math league, the school newspaper. I carved out my own identity in spaces where I wouldn't have to compete with her. But even then, Cassandra found ways to insert herself if she sensed I was getting too much positive attention. When I was chosen as editor of the school newspaper junior year, Cassandra suddenly decided she was interested in journalism. She wrote one article, a gossip column that became wildly popular, and soon she was all anyone in the journalism room could talk about. My careful editing and organizational skills were overlooked in favor of her flashy content. College was my escape. I attended State University 2 hours from home, while Cassandra opted for the local community college, so she could continue living at home and working part-time as a receptionist at a hair salon. For the first time, I was in an environment where no one knew me as Cassandra's little sister. I could just be Naomi. I thrived in college. I made genuine friends who appreciated me for myself. I double majored in business and communications, joined the student government, and interned at a marketing firm during my junior and senior years. By graduation, I had a job offer from a respected company in Chicago. I was building my own life step by step, and the constant comparison to Cassandra was finally fading. But my sister wasn't happy about my growing independence and success. When I came home for holidays or family events, she would make subtle digs about how I thought I was too good for Maplewood now. She'd imply to our relatives that my job wasn't as impressive as I made it sound. And most painfully, she'd manipulate our parents into making my achievements seem less important than whatever was happening in her life. The summer after my college graduation, when my parents should have been celebrating my new job in Chicago, all anyone could talk about was Cassandra's new boyfriend, Ethan. He was handsome, successful, and came from a good family. According to my parents, Cassandra had finally found direction because of him. My move to Chicago and career launch became a footnote to Cassandra's romance. I didn't know then how that relationship would eventually tear our family apart, with me caught in the crossfire of Cassandra's lies. Ethan Thompson was everything my sister had supposedly been looking for in a partner. Tall, with sandy blonde hair and a warm smile, he had graduated from an Ivy League university and worked as an investment analyst at a financial firm in the city. He came from a wealthy family but was surprisingly down-to-earth and genuinely kind, qualities that in hindsight should have made me wonder what he saw in my sister. They met at a charity gala that Cassandra had attended with a friend who worked at the same firm as Ethan. According to the story she told our family, he had spotted her across the room and hadn't been able to take his eyes off her. By the end of the night, he had her number, and within a week, they were officially dating. Their courtship was a whirlwind. After just 6 months, Ethan proposed with a diamond ring that made my mother gasp when Cassandra flashed it around. The timing of their engagement coincided with my big promotion at work, which I had called home to share with my parents. I had been excited about the recognition and the substantial raise that came with it. But when I called, all my mother could talk about was Cassandra's engagement. "Oh, Naomi, you'll never guess what happened. Ethan proposed to Cassandra last night. The ring is absolutely stunning. 3 carats at least. We're so excited. Oh, and congratulations on your work thing too, dear." The wedding planning immediately took over our family's entire life. My parents dipped into their retirement savings to give Cassandra the elaborate wedding she wanted, a grand affair at the most expensive venue in the county. I was asked to be the maid of honor, a role that quickly became a second job, as Cassandra's demands grew increasingly unreasonable. She insisted on a designer dress that cost more than 3 months of my rent. She changed the floral arrangements 4 times. She fired 2 photographers and a wedding planner. Through it all, my parents indulged her every whim, repeatedly telling her that this was her special day, and she deserved everything to be perfect. When I gently suggested that some of her requests might be putting financial strain on our parents, Cassandra burst into tears and accused me of trying to ruin her wedding because I was jealous. My parents sided with her immediately. "Naomi, if you can't be supportive, maybe you shouldn't be in the wedding party," my father had said, his tone making it clear this wasn't actually an option I could choose. So I kept my mouth shut and my credit card ready, going into debt to help fund the bachelor party, the bridal shower, and all the other pre-wedding events that Cassandra insisted were essential. The wedding itself was as over-the-top as expected. 6 bridesmaids in custom gowns, a 5-tier cake and open bar with top-shelf liquor, and a band that had once opened for a famous country singer. Throughout the reception, I smiled for photos and gave a heartfelt toast, playing my role perfectly. But I couldn't help noticing how Ethan seemed slightly overwhelmed by it all. During a rare moment alone when we were both getting drinks at the bar, he confided in me. "Is it always like this with your family? The intensity?" he asked, watching as Cassandra directed the photographer to retake group shots because she wasn't satisfied with the lighting. "Cassandra has always been the star of the show," I replied carefully. "You'll get used to it." He gave me a look I couldn't quite interpret. "Your speech was really nice, Naomi. I'm glad Cassandra has a sister like you." That brief conversation was the beginning of a friendship that developed naturally over the next 2 years. Ethan and I got along well. We shared similar interests in books and hiking that Cassandra didn't participate in. When our families got together for holidays or events, Ethan and I often ended up chatting while Cassandra held court with others or monopolized our parents' attention. I never thought of our relationship as anything but a normal in-law friendship. But as Cassandra and Ethan's marriage progressed, I began to notice troubling signs. At family gatherings, Cassandra would often belittle Ethan, publicly making jokes about his boring job or criticizing his choice of clothes. She would cut him off mid-sentence or roll her eyes when he was speaking. "That's not how it happened, Ethan," she would say dismissively. "Let me tell it properly." In private, Ethan started confiding in me about Cassandra's behavior at home. Her mood swings were unpredictable and extreme. She would give him the silent treatment for days if he worked late or had to travel for business. She demanded access to all his emails and text messages, accusing him of cheating if he hesitated even for a moment. "I feel like I'm walking on eggshells all the time," he told me during a family 4th of July barbecue while Cassandra was inside helping our mother with dessert. "Nothing I do is ever right." I tried to help to mediate between them. I suggested couples counseling and even offered to talk to Cassandra myself. But my sister didn't take kindly to any implication that she was contributing to the problems in her marriage. "Stay out of my relationship, Naomi," she snapped when I gently brought up how she had humiliated Ethan at our cousin's wedding by flirting with one of the groomsmen right in front of him. "Just because you can't keep a boyfriend doesn't mean you know anything about marriage." That stung, especially because my own romantic life had taken a back seat to my career. But I backed off, not wanting to make things worse. Instead, I tried to be supportive of both of them, individually listening when either needed to talk, but avoiding giving direct advice. As their second anniversary approached, the cracks in their marriage became impossible to ignore. Cassandra's spending had become out of control. She was shopping constantly, buying designer clothes and expensive jewelry that they couldn't afford on even their combined salaries. When Ethan tried to discuss budgeting, she accused him of being controlling and stingy. I witnessed one such argument when I was visiting my parents and Cassandra and Ethan stopped by. Ethan had just discovered a credit card statement showing that Cassandra had spent over $5,000 at high-end stores in a single day. "We talked about this, Cass," he said, his voice strained but quiet, clearly trying to avoid making a scene in front of family. "We're trying to save for a house, remember?" "It was our anniversary," Cassandra replied flippantly. "Besides, your bonus should cover it, unless you're planning to spend that on your little business trips too." The accusation hung in the air, and I saw the hurt and anger flash across Ethan's face before he composed himself. "I'm going to get some air," he said, walking out to the backyard. I followed him a few minutes later, concerned. "Are you okay?" I asked, finding him sitting on the old swing set our father had built when we were children. "Not really," he admitted. "I don't know how much longer I can do this, Naomi. She doesn't trust me, she doesn't respect me, and I'm starting to think she doesn't even like me anymore." "Have you considered counseling?" I suggested again. "I've brought it up. She refuses." He looked at me, his expression defeated. "Sometimes I think the only person in her family who actually sees me as a person and not just an accessory is you." I placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, a completely innocent gesture between in-laws. "It'll get better, Ethan. These are just growing pains in the relationship." What I didn't know then was that Cassandra had watched this interaction from the kitchen window, her mind already twisting it into something sinister. The seeds of her devastating accusation were being planted, and I had no idea what was coming. The day that changed everything was Thanksgiving, just over 3 years ago. My parents had invited the whole extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins from both sides. It was the first major holiday since I had moved back to the Midwest, taking a position at a marketing firm in Indianapolis to be closer to family. Cassandra and Ethan had been married for nearly 3 years at that point, and the tension between them was palpable to anyone paying attention. I arrived early to help my mother with the cooking, as I always did. The house smelled of roasting turkey and pumpkin pie, and holiday music played softly in the background. Everything seemed normal, festive, even despite the undercurrent of tension I'd come to associate with family gatherings. Where are Cassandra and Ethan? I asked as I chopped vegetables for the stuffing. My mother's expression tightened slightly. They're running late. Cassandra called and said they had some things to discuss before coming over. Something in her tone made me look up. Is everything okay? I'm sure it's fine, she said, but she didn't meet my eyes. You know how they are. Always some drama or other. Guests began arriving around 2 o'clock. My father's sister, Aunt Patricia, and her husband, my mother's brother, Uncle David, and his family, a few cousins with their spouses and children. By 3, everyone had arrived except Cassandra and Ethan. My mother kept checking her phone, growing increasingly anxious. She's not answering my texts, she fretted. Should we wait to serve dinner? Just as we were about to sit down without them, the front door opened. Cassandra walked in alone, her eyes red and puffy, her makeup smudged. She had clearly been crying. A hush fell over the gathered family as all eyes turned to her. Cassie, honey, what's wrong? My mother asked, rushing to her side. Where's Ethan? Cassandra's lower lip trembled dramatically. He's gone, she whispered, just loud enough for everyone to hear. He left me. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the room. My mother guided Cassandra to the sofa, where she collapsed in a heap of designer clothes and theatrical sobs. The entire family gathered around, offering tissues, comfort, and indignation on her behalf. What happened? My father demanded, his face flushed with anger at the thought of someone hurting his precious daughter. Cassandra looked up, her mascara streaming down her cheeks in perfect tragic rivulets. And then, her gaze found me standing at the edge of the group, and something cold and calculated flickered behind her tears. He's been cheating on me, she announced. For months. More gasps, more outrage. My Aunt Patricia immediately launched into a tirade about the faithlessness of men, while my Uncle David awkwardly patted Cassandra's shoulder. With who? Someone asked. The room fell silent as Cassandra slowly raised her hand and pointed directly at me. With my own sister, she said, her voice breaking on the last word. For a moment, I thought I had misheard. The accusation was so outlandish, so completely divorced from reality, that my brain couldn't process it. I actually laughed, a short, incredulous sound that died instantly when I saw the expressions on my family's faces. That's ridiculous, I said, finding my voice. Cassandra, what are you talking about? But she was prepared. From her purse, she pulled out a stack of papers, printouts of text messages between Ethan and me, completely innocent messages about book recommendations, about a hiking trail I had suggested, about a birthday gift for Cassandra that Ethan had asked my advice on. But taken out of context, with Cassandra narrating her own twisted interpretation, they began to sound suspicious. Look at this one, she said, thrusting a paper at my mother. I really enjoyed our time together last weekend. What time, Naomi? When you told me you were working, but your car was seen at the coffee shop near his office. We had coffee, I protested, because he wanted advice on what to get you for your anniversary. And this one? She continued as if I hadn't spoken. Thanks for understanding. No one else does. What exactly do you understand about my husband that I don't? Naomi, he was upset about a fight you two had. I explained, looking desperately around the room for any sign that someone believed me. He just needed someone to talk to. But Cassandra had more evidence. Coincidental meetings that she reframed as secret rendezvous. Photos from family events where Ethan and I were talking that she presented as proof of some clandestine connection. A birthday card he had signed, "With love, Ethan," that she claimed was too intimate for an in-law. It was all circumstantial, all innocuous when viewed honestly. But Cassandra wove a convincing narrative of betrayal, complete with dates and times when she claimed we had been sneaking around behind her back. And my family, the people who had known me my entire life, looked at me with disgust and disappointment. Where is Ethan now? I asked, trying to stay calm. Call him. Ask him. This is insane. He's gone, Cassandra said bitterly. He packed a bag and left. Probably couldn't face the family after what you two did. I pulled out my phone. I'm calling him right now. He blocked your number, Cassandra said smugly. He told me everything this morning, Naomi. How you pursued him, how you wouldn't take no for an answer. He felt so guilty he couldn't even stay in town. It was a masterful performance. By making Ethan unavailable for questioning, she controlled the entire narrative. And without him, there to defend either of us, her version of events was the only one my family heard. After the initial shock, my parents pulled me into my father's study for a private conversation. I expected them to tell me they knew Cassandra was lying, that they would help sort this out. Instead, my father looked at me with such profound disappointment that I physically recoiled. How could you do this to your sister? He asked, his voice low and heavy with judgment. I didn't, I insisted, tears springing to my eyes. Dad, you can't possibly believe this. You know me. My mother sat rigidly in the leather armchair. Her hands clasped so tightly, her knuckles were white. The evidence seems quite clear, Naomi. Evidence? There is no evidence. Those messages were completely innocent. Ethan and I are friends. That's all we've ever been. Friends don't sneak around behind their sister's back, my father countered. Friends don't cause marriages to fall apart. I didn't cause anything, I was shouting now, desperate to make them understand. Cassandra and Ethan have been having problems for months. She's controlling, she spends all their money, she accuses him of cheating constantly. With me, with coworkers, with anyone. Ask anyone who's been around them. But they wouldn't listen. In their eyes, Cassandra was the victim, and I was the villain. The fact that they would so readily believe the worst of me, without a shred of real evidence, was a wound deeper than anything Cassandra's accusation could inflict. You have a choice, my father said finally. You can admit what you've done, apologize to your sister, and we can begin to heal as a family. Or you can continue to deny it and leave this house. I stared at him in disbelief. You're asking me to confess to something I didn't do. We're asking you to take responsibility. My mother said, her voice cold. To think about someone other than yourself for once. In that moment, I realized a fundamental truth about my family. They had never really seen me. Not the real me. They had always viewed me through the lens of Cassandra's narratives, accepting her version of reality without question. And if that was the case, there was nothing I could say that would change their minds. I'm leaving, I said quietly. Not because I'm guilty, but because I refuse to be part of a family that doesn't trust me enough to even consider that I might be innocent. I walked out of the study through the dining room where the turkey was getting cold on the table, past the living room where relatives pretended not to watch me leave. No one stopped me. No one spoke up in my defense. As I reached for the front door, I heard Cassandra's sob, a perfect practice sound designed to draw all attention back to her. That was the last time I saw any of them for 5 long years. The weeks following Thanksgiving were the darkest of my life. I returned to my apartment in Indianapolis in a daze, unable to fully process what had happened. How could my entire family turn on me so completely? How could they believe I was capable of betraying my own sister? The shock gave way to a profound depression that made it difficult to even get out of bed in the morning. I tried repeatedly to contact Ethan, hoping he could clear up the misunderstanding. But as Cassandra had claimed, my calls went straight to voicemail, and my texts remained unanswered. I even drove to their house only to find it dark and empty, with a for sale sign already planted in the front yard. A neighbor told me that Ethan had packed up and left town, and Cassandra was staying with her parents. My parents. The isolation was complete and devastating. Not only had I lost my family, but I had also lost any chance to defend myself against Cassandra's accusations. Without Ethan to corroborate my version of events, it was my word against hers. And my family had made it clear whose word they valued more. The holidays that year were excruciating. I sent Christmas cards to my parents and extended family along with heartfelt letters explaining my side of the story and begging them to reconsider. They were all returned unopened. I called on Christmas Day, hoping the spirit of the season might soften their hearts, but my mother answered only to tell me that they weren't ready to talk to me and that I should respect their boundaries. What about my boundaries? I had asked, my voice breaking. What about my right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty? This isn't a courtroom, Naomi, she had replied coldly. This is family, and you've broken ours. The new year brought no relief. I threw myself into my work, staying late at the office and taking on extra projects to fill the void left by my family's absence. My colleagues noticed the change in me, the dark circles under my eyes, the weight loss, the forced smile that never reached my eyes. But I deflected their concerns with vague references to family issues I was working through. Social media became both a lifeline and a source of pain. Through mutual friends' posts, I caught glimpses of family events I wasn't invited to. My cousin's wedding, my uncle's retirement party, my parents' 30th anniversary celebration. In each photo, Cassandra was front and center, often with a sympathetic arm around her, the picture of resilient grace in the face of betrayal. The narrative she had crafted was clear. Poor Cassandra, abandoned by her cheating husband and betrayed by her own sister, bravely rebuilding her life. My parents shared posts about the importance of family loyalty, about healing from betrayal, thinly veiled references to their disappointment in me. The extended family followed their lead, some even sending me messages urging me to do the right thing and apologize for what I had done to Cassandra. Friends we had in common gradually stopped contacting me. At first, they tried to stay neutral, but as Cassandra's version of events spread through our social circle, most found it easier to simply cut ties with me than to navigate the awkwardness. A few reached out privately to say they didn't believe the accusations, but even they drifted away over time, unable or unwilling to maintain a friendship that required choosing sides. After a year of this emotional torture, I made a difficult decision. I applied for a transfer to my company's Seattle office, as far from the Midwest and the painful memories as I could get. Starting over in a new city where no one knew me or my story was both terrifying and liberating. I found a small apartment with a view of Puget Sound, joined a hiking club to force myself to be social, and started seeing a therapist to process the trauma of being falsely accused and abandoned by my family. Dr. Winters. My therapist helped me understand that what I was experiencing was a form of complex grief. Mourning the loss of my family while they were still alive, mourning the relationship I thought we had, mourning the person I thought I was in their eyes. She also helped me recognize the patterns of favoritism and emotional manipulation that had defined my relationship with Cassandra since childhood. Your sister displays many characteristics of narcissistic personality disorder, Dr. Winters suggested during one session. The inability to accept responsibility, the constant need for admiration, the lack of empathy, the manipulation of others to get what she wants. And your parents have enabled this behavior throughout your lives. Understanding the dynamics didn't ease the pain, but it did help me stop blaming myself. I had done nothing wrong except exist in Cassandra's orbit, occasionally receiving attention or success that she felt entitled to. In her worldview, I was always the supporting character in her story, never meant to have a narrative of my own. The years passed. I built a new life in Seattle, made new friends, advanced in my career, even dated occasionally, though I struggled to fully trust after what had happened. I adopted a dog, a gentle golden retriever named Max, who became my constant companion. I bought a small house with a garden where I grew vegetables and flowers. From the outside, I appeared to have moved on. but the wound of my family's betrayal never fully healed. Every birthday that passed without a call from my parents, every Christmas spent with friends instead of family, every achievement that went uncelebrated by the people who had raised me, each was a fresh reminder of what I had lost. I checked my email daily, hoping for some sign that they had realized their mistake, that they wanted to reconnect. That hope, however faint, was the last thread connecting me to them. What I didn't know was that the truth was about to find its way to me in the most unexpected way. 5 years after being exiled from my family, I attended a marketing conference in San Francisco. It was a major industry event that I had been looking forward to for months, a chance to network with peers and learn about emerging trends in digital marketing. The last thing I expected was for my past to come crashing back into my life. During the networking reception on the second evening, I was chatting with a group of colleagues when I heard someone call my name. I turned to see a vaguely familiar face, a man with dark hair and glasses who was looking at me with a mixture of surprise and recognition. "Naomi Wilson?" he asked, approaching with an uncertain smile. It took me a moment to place him. Lucas Moore." He nodded, clearly pleased that I remembered him. Lucas had been one of Ethan's college friends, someone I had met a few times at social gatherings during Cassandra and Ethan's marriage. We had always gotten along well, sharing an interest in classic films and indie music that neither Cassandra nor Ethan particularly cared about. "I thought that was you," he said, offering his hand. "What a small world. What brings you to San Francisco?" "I'm presenting a workshop tomorrow on social media strategy," I explained. "What about you?" "I work for a tech startup based here," he replied. "When I saw your name on the conference program, I wondered if it was the same Naomi I knew from back in Indianapolis." We moved to the hotel bar to catch up, and for a while, the conversation remained pleasantly superficial. My move to Seattle, his career in tech, mutual acquaintances from the old days. I was careful not to bring up Cassandra or Ethan, not wanting to reopen old wounds or trigger uncomfortable questions about the scandal that had torn my family apart. But after his second scotch, Lucas brought up the subject himself. "So, have you heard from Ethan at all since everything?" I tensed my wine glass halfway to my lips. "No," I said carefully. "I haven't had any contact with him since they split up." Lucas studied me for a moment, then leaned forward. "You know he moved to Europe after the divorce, right? London at first, then Berlin. He's working for an international investment firm now." I hadn't known that. The thought of Ethan building a new life across the ocean while I had been left to deal with the fallout of Cassandra's lies made my chest tight with renewed anger. "Good for him," I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. Lucas seemed to be debating whether to say more. He finished his drink, then signaled the bartender for another before turning back to me with a more serious expression. "Look, Naomi, I've wanted to reach out to you for years, but I didn't know how to find you after you moved. And frankly, I wasn't sure if you'd want to hear from anyone connected to that part of your life." My heart began to race. "What do you mean?" "I know what really happened," he said quietly. "With Cassandra and Ethan, and it wasn't what she told everyone." The world seemed to slow down around me. The ambient noise of the bar faded as I focused entirely on Lucas's words. "What are you talking about?" "Cassandra was the one having affairs," he said bluntly. "Multiple affairs throughout their marriage. Ethan found out just before everything blew up." I felt lightheaded, as if all the oxygen had suddenly been sucked from the room. "How do you know this?" Lucas looked uncomfortable. "Because one of the men she was seeing was my brother Ryan. He didn't know she was married at first. She took off her ring when she was with him and said she was single. When he found out, he ended it immediately and told me everything." My mind was reeling. "But Cassandra accused me of having an affair with Ethan," She showed my family messages photos. A classic case of projection, Lucas said grimly. Ethan had discovered receipts for hotel rooms, seen suspicious text messages on her phone. He confronted her just before Thanksgiving. She panicked and decided the best defense was a good offense. Accuse him of cheating first with you to distract from her own infidelity. But why me? I whispered, though I already knew the answer. I had always been Cassandra's scapegoat, the person she blamed when things went wrong, the one whose accomplishments she diminished to make herself shine brighter. You were an easy target, Lucas said simply. You and Ethan were friends. You lived nearby, and Cassandra knew your family would believe her over you. They always had. Tears burned behind my eyes as 5 years of pain, confusion, and injustice crashed over me in waves. Does Ethan know I was blamed that my family disowned me? Lucas nodded solemnly. He found out after he left town. He tried to contact your parents to tell them the truth, but they refused to speak with him. He even sent letters, but I'm guessing Cassandra intercepted those. Do you have any proof? I asked, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Anything concrete that shows Cassandra was the one having affairs. Lucas hesitated. I shouldn't have this, he said, pulling out his phone. But Ryan sent me screenshots of their text conversations before he blocked her number. And I have photos from a company party where she showed up as his date, while she was still married to Ethan. He pulled up the images and handed me his phone. There was Cassandra, unmistakable in a red dress. I recognized her arm around a man who must have been Ryan. The date stamp on the photo was just 2 weeks before the fateful Thanksgiving. He swiped to show me the text exchanges, explicit messages between Cassandra and Ryan arranging meetings, complaining about her boring husband, planning weekend getaways while telling Ethan she was visiting friends. There were even hotel receipts that Ryan had kept proving they had stayed overnight together multiple times. Ryan wasn't the only one, Lucas added as I scrolled through the damning evidence. Ethan found out about at least 2 other men. One was her personal trainer. The other was a client at the PR firm where she worked. The pieces were falling into place. Cassandra's late nights at the office, her sudden interest in fitness that had her at the gym for hours, her defensive accusations whenever Ethan questioned her whereabouts. She had been hiding her affairs in plain sight, and when Ethan discovered the truth, she had used me as a convenient scapegoat. I can forward all of this to you, Lucas offered, if you want it. I looked up from the phone, a strange calm settling over me as shock gave way to clarity. Yes, I said. I want everything you have. That night, back in my hotel room, I sat cross-legged on the bed and examined every piece of evidence Lucas had sent me. The more I saw, the angrier I became, not just at Cassandra for her betrayal and lies, but at my family for believing her so readily, for casting me out without even considering my side of the story. 5 years of my life had been defined by this injustice. 5 years of holidays spent alone, of achievements uncelebrated by those who should have been proudest, of doubting my own worth because the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally had discarded me based on a lie. As dawn broke over San Francisco, I made a decision. It was time for the truth to come out. Time for Cassandra to face the consequences of her actions. Time for my family to confront their own role in my exile. With trembling hands but resolute heart, I opened my laptop and began composing an email that would change everything. The email took me 3 days to write. I wanted it to be perfect. Clear, factual, unemotional. Not a rant or a plea, but a straightforward presentation of the truth that had been hidden for so long. I titled it simply, What Really Happened. I addressed it to my parents, Cassandra, and the extended family members who had cut me out of their lives based on her lies. I included Lucas as a witness, should anyone question the authenticity of the evidence. For 5 years, I began, I have lived with the pain of being falsely accused of betraying my sister and destroying her marriage. I have respected your decision to exclude me from your lives, though it has broken my heart. I have never stopped hoping that one day the truth would come to light. That day has arrived. I explained how I had reconnected with Lucas and what he had revealed to me. I attached the photos, the text messages, the hotel receipts, all the evidence that proved beyond any doubt that Cassandra had been the unfaithful one, not Ethan, and certainly not me. Cassandra accused me of having an affair with Ethan to deflect attention from her own infidelity, I wrote. She knew that if she cast herself as the victim first, any attempt by Ethan to reveal the truth would look like retaliation. And she knew that you would believe her over me as you always have. I didn't mince words about the pain their abandonment had caused me. You chose to believe the worst about me without evidence, without investigation, without even giving me the benefit of the doubt. You disowned your daughter and sister based on the word of someone who has manipulated you throughout her life. The damage this has done to me cannot be overstated. I ended with a statement rather than a question. I am not sending this to ask for your apology or to reestablish contact. I am sending it because the truth deserves to be known. What you do with this information is up to you. Then I took a deep breath and hit send. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within minutes, my phone began buzzing with incoming calls and messages. I let them all go to voicemail, not ready to hear their voices or read their words. I needed time to process what I had done and prepare for the fallout. By evening, my inbox was flooded. Subject lines ranged from "Please call us" to "I'm so sorry" to "How dare you?" I steeled myself and began reading. My mother's email came first, a confused, emotional mess of apology and defensiveness. "We never meant to hurt you," she wrote. "We were just trying to support Cassandra in her time of need. How were we supposed to know she was lying?" My father's message was briefer but more direct. "I've made a terrible mistake," he admitted. "I failed you as a father. I don't expect your forgiveness, but I'm asking for a chance to speak with you." My Aunt Lisa, who had always been closer to me than to Cassandra, wrote a heartfelt apology. "I knew something wasn't right," she confessed. "The way Cassandra told the story never quite added up, but I went along with everyone else instead of trusting my instincts. I'm so deeply sorry, Naomi." Other relatives sent similar messages, expressions of shock apologies, requests to reconnect. Some admitted they had harbored doubts about Cassandra's version of events, but had been unwilling to go against the family consensus. Others claimed they had been completely deceived and never would have cut me off if they had known the truth. Notably absent was any response from Cassandra herself. Until the next morning, when my phone rang at 6 a.m., I had been awake already, unable to sleep with all the emotions churning inside me. When I saw her name on the caller ID, I almost didn't answer. But a part of me needed to hear what she had to say, needed the confirmation of her guilt that her own voice would provide. "How could you?" she hissed as soon as I picked up. No greeting, no preamble, just immediate attack, as had always been her way. How could I, what Cassandra, tell the truth? The better question is, how could you lie about me for 5 years while knowing exactly what you had done? Those messages were private. She snapped, not even attempting to deny their authenticity. Lucas had no right to share them, and you had no right to accuse me of sleeping with your husband when you were the one cheating on him with multiple men, I replied, my voice steady despite the anger coursing through me. You had no right to turn our family against me to cover up your own betrayal. I was protecting my marriage, she shouted. You don't understand what it was like. Ethan was distant. He was always working. He didn't appreciate me. I needed something for myself. So you cheated on him, And when he found out, you decided to save yourself by destroying my relationship with our family. The coldness in my own voice surprised me. That's not protection, Cassandra. That's monstrous. She began to cry, then the same theatrical sobs I had heard at that Thanksgiving dinner 5 years ago. What am I supposed to do now? She wailed. Everyone hates me. Mom and Dad can barely look at me. You've ruined everything. The irony of her accusation was not lost on me. I ruined nothing, I said quietly. You did this to yourself, and now you're facing the consequences of your actions, probably for the first time in your life. They'll forgive me, she said suddenly, her tone shifting from despair to defiance. They always do. I'm their daughter too, and once the initial shock wears off, they'll remember that family comes first. They'll understand why I did what I did. Maybe they will, I conceded. But it won't be the same, will it? They'll never trust you completely again. They'll always wonder what else you've lied about, and they'll have to live with the knowledge that they chose the wrong daughter to believe. Cassandra was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was colder, more calculated. This isn't over, Naomi. You think you've won, but you haven't. You think this makes everything better, but it doesn't. You're still alone in Seattle, and I'm still here with our parents. Geography counts for a lot when it comes to family loyalty. Her threat didn't frighten me as it once might have. Goodbye, Cassandra, I said, and disconnected the call. Later that day, my father called. This time, I answered. Naomi, he said, his voice breaking on my name. We need to talk, face to face. Your mother and I want to come to Seattle. Please. I agreed to meet them not out of any desire for reconciliation, but because I needed closure. I needed to look them in the eyes and hear them acknowledge what they had done. They arrived the following weekend looking older and more worn than I remembered. My mother burst into tears when she saw me reaching for an embrace that I sidestepped. My father stood awkwardly in my living room, his eyes taking in the life I had built without them. The photos of friends they had never met. The awards from work they hadn't celebrated, the evidence of 5 years they had chosen to miss. Cassandra confessed everything, my mother said once we were seated. After your email, after all the evidence, she couldn't deny it anymore. She admitted she made up the affair between you and Ethan to cover up her own infidelity. I know, I said simply. That's what I've been trying to tell you for 5 years. We should have listened, my father said, his voice heavy with regret. We should have questioned her story, looked for evidence, given you the benefit of the doubt. Instead, we just accepted what she said because it was easier than believing our perfect daughter could be so deeply flawed. She's been the perfect daughter in your eyes since we were children, I pointed out. You've always made excuses for her behavior, always taken her side in any conflict, always prioritized her feelings over mine. This was just the culmination of a lifetime of favoritism. They didn't deny it. For the first time, they seemed to truly see the pattern that had defined our family dynamic for decades. We want to make amends, my mother said tearfully. We want you back in our lives. We've missed so much. Your 30s, your career accomplishments. We don't want to miss any more. I looked at them. These two people who had raised me, who claimed to love me, yet who had cast me out without a second thought based on the word of a daughter they had always favored. I don't know if that's possible, I said honestly. Trust once broken is very hard to rebuild, and you broke mine completely. We'll do anything, my father pleaded. Therapy, family counseling, whatever it takes. We know we don't deserve your forgiveness, but we're asking for a chance to earn it. A part of me wanted to turn them away, to let them feel a fraction of the rejection I had experienced. But another part, the part that had checked my email daily for 5 years, hoping for a message from them, Recognize this as an opportunity for healing, however imperfect. I'll consider it, I said finally. But I need time, and I need you to understand that things will never be the same between us. The daughter who trusted you implicitly doesn't exist anymore. They nodded, accepting this as the best they could hope for. As they were leaving, my father turned back. Cassandra is seeing a therapist, he said. She's been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. It doesn't excuse what she did, but it helps explain some of her behavior over the years. I wasn't surprised by the diagnosis, but I was surprised that my parents had finally acknowledged there was something wrong with their golden child's behavior. I hope she gets the help she needs, I said, and meant it. Despite everything, Cassandra was still my sister, and her life couldn't have been easy living with that kind of disorder. After they left, I sat alone in my living room processing everything that had happened. The truth was finally out. My name was cleared. My family wanted me back. It should have felt like a victory, like the happy ending I had been waiting for. Instead, it felt complicated and bittersweet. The damage had been done, and no apology could erase 5 years of abandonment. The family I had lost could never truly be regained because I was no longer the person they had known. The experience had changed me, hardened me, in some ways, made me more self-reliant in others. I didn't know yet if reconciliation was possible or even desirable. But I knew that for the first time in 5 years, I was no longer defined by someone else's lie. I could move forward on my own terms, whether that meant rebuilding relationships with my family or continuing the independent life I had created for myself. The truth, as they say, had set me free. In the months that followed, I navigated a new and complex relationship with my family. We began with small steps: weekly phone calls, occasional video chats, carefully worded emails. I maintained firm boundaries, making it clear that I wasn't ready for full immersion back into family life. They respected this, perhaps understanding for the first time that my independence wasn't a rejection of them, but a necessary protection for myself. I did agree to family therapy, which proved to be both challenging and illuminating. Our therapist, Dr. Martinez, didn't shy away from addressing the dysfunctional patterns that had defined our family for decades. She named the favoritism, the enabling of Cassandra's behavior, the scapegoating of me when things went wrong. My parents struggled to hear these truths at first, but over time, they began to acknowledge their role in creating an environment where Cassandra's accusation could be believed without question. "You didn't just fail Naomi when you rejected her 5 years ago," Dr. Martinez told them during one particularly intense session. "You failed her throughout her childhood by consistently prioritizing Cassandra's needs and feelings over hers. And in doing so, you also failed Cassandra by never setting appropriate boundaries or holding her accountable for her actions." It was validating to hear someone else articulate what I had felt, but could never express. The therapy sessions became a space where I could finally speak my truth without fear of being dismissed or invalidated. Cassandra refused to join our therapy sessions, at first maintaining that she was the real victim in the situation, victimized by Ethan's emotional neglect, by her own mental health struggles, and now by my vindictive exposure of her private affairs. But as the family dynamic shifted, and she realized she could no longer manipulate our parents as easily, she reluctantly agreed to attend. Her presence changed the tenor of our sessions completely. She alternated between tearful apologies and subtle attempts to reframe the narrative in her favor. "I was in a dark place," she would say. "I was desperate. I made a mistake, but haven't we all? Doesn't family mean forgiveness?" I watched my parents carefully during these performances, relieved to see that they were no longer so easily swayed by her tears. The evidence of her deliberate, sustained campaign to destroy my relationship with the family was too overwhelming to dismiss as a simple mistake made in a moment of desperation. During one particularly difficult session, Dr. Martinez asked Cassandra directly why she had chosen to accuse me specifically rather than inventing an affair with a colleague or friend. Cassandra's mask slipped for a moment, revealing the cold calculation beneath. "Because it was believable," she said. "Everyone could see how close Naomi and Ethan were getting, and I knew Mom and Dad would take my side over hers. They always have." The blunt admission stunned the room into silence. It was the first time Cassandra had acknowledged the family dynamic without trying to soften or justify it. And it was the first time my parents had heard her explicitly state that she had counted on their favoritism as part of her plan. Outside of therapy, I was rebuilding my life in Seattle now, unburdened by the weight of false accusations and family estrangement. I had been promoted at work, taking on a role as director of digital strategy that utilized all the skills I had honed while pouring myself into my career during those lonely years. I had a circle of friends who had stood by me through the darkest times and who now celebrated with me as the light returned. And unexpectedly, I reconnected with Ethan. After learning from Lucas that the truth had finally come out, he reached out via email from Berlin. "Naomi," he wrote, "I can't begin to express how sorry I am for what you've endured because of Cassandra's lies. I tried to set the record straight when I learned what she had accused you of, but your parents refused to hear me out. I should have tried harder, found another way to reach you directly. My silence and absence only helped perpetuate the lie, and for that, I am deeply sorry." We began a correspondence that was cautious at first, but gradually became more open and frequent. He told me about his life in Europe, his work with an international investment firm, his newfound passion for photography, the German language classes he was taking. I shared stories of Seattle, my career successes, the healing process I was undertaking with my family. 6 months after the truth came to light, Ethan returned to the United States for a business conference in Seattle. We met for coffee, which turned into dinner, which turned into a long walk along the waterfront as we talked for hours, catching up on 5 years of separated lives. "I never believed you were involved in the breakdown of my marriage," he assured me. "I knew Cassandra was the one having affairs. I just didn't realize she had blamed you until it was too late." "Why didn't you fight harder to clear my name?" I asked the question that had lingered since I learned he had known about Cassandra's accusations. He looked ashamed. "I was a coward," he admitted. "I was so devastated by the discovery of Cassandra's infidelity, so humiliated by the public spectacle of our divorce that I just wanted to escape. Moving to Europe was running away, I know that now. If I had stayed and fought, maybe you wouldn't have lost those years with your family." I couldn't deny that his actions, or lack thereof, had contributed to my suffering. But I also recognized that he too had been a victim of Cassandra's manipulation. "We both did the best we could with the information we had at the time," I said finally. "And we've both had to rebuild our lives from the wreckage she left behind." As for Cassandra herself, her life had imploded in the wake of the revealed truth. The carefully constructed image she had maintained, the wronged wife, the resilient survivor, crumbled as word spread through our social circle about what she had really done. Friends distanced themselves. Colleagues whispered behind her back, and the sympathy she had cultivated turned to disgust. My parents, though, trying to maintain a relationship with both daughters, had fundamentally changed how they interacted with her. They no longer rushed to defend her actions or make excuses for her behavior. They set boundaries and held her accountable in ways they never had before. Faced with this new reality, Cassandra had two choices: continue to fight against the truth and further isolate herself, or accept responsibility and begin the hard work of changing. Initially, she chose the former, lashing out at everyone she perceived as having betrayed her by believing the evidence of her affairs. She created dramatic scenes at family gatherings, sent accusatory late-night texts, and tried to turn relatives against each other. But as her support system continued to shrink, and her therapist continued to challenge her distorted thinking, she slowly, reluctantly began to change. The transformation wasn't dramatic or complete. Narcissistic personality disorder isn't cured overnight, if ever. But there were small signs of progress. Moments of genuine remorse instead of performative apologies. Flashes of self-awareness about her manipulative tactics. Occasional acknowledgments of how her actions had hurt others. A year after the email that had exposed everything, my family gathered for Thanksgiving again. The first holiday I had agreed to spend with them since the estrangement. It was at my Aunt Lisa's house, neutral territory, that didn't carry the painful memories of that fateful dinner 5 years earlier. Cassandra was there, subdued and less perfectly put together than I remembered her. Our interaction was civil but distant, both of us aware of the chasm between us that might never be fully bridged. My parents were nervously attentive, clearly anxious about having both daughters at the same table again. As we sat down to dinner, my aunt asked us to share something we were thankful for, a family tradition that had always felt a bit forced, but now carried more weight given our recent history. When it was my turn, I said simply, "I'm thankful for truth and for the chance to rebuild on a foundation of honesty." Cassandra, sitting across from me, met my eyes for perhaps the first time that day. "I'm thankful for second chances," she said quietly, "and for the opportunity to become someone worthy of them." I didn't know if she meant it or if it was just another performance. With Cassandra, it was always hard to tell where the act ended and the real person began. But as we continued with the meal, I realized that it didn't matter as much as it once would have. I had learned to define myself outside of her shadow, to build a life based on my own truth, rather than in reaction to her lies. The family I had now wasn't the idealized version I had longed for during those years of estrangement. It was imperfect, complicated, still healing from deep wounds. But it was honest, in a way it had never been before. The masks had been removed, the dysfunctional patterns named, and addressed, the favoritism acknowledged, and gradually being corrected. And I had changed too. The person who had left that Thanksgiving dinner 5 years ago in tears, devastated by rejection, wasn't the same woman who sat at the table now. I was stronger, more certain of my worth, less dependent on others' validation. I had learned to trust my own truth, even when no one else did, to stand firm in the face of injustice, to rebuild from ashes. The email that had ruined Cassandra's carefully constructed facade of victimhood had, in a strange way, offered all of us a chance at authentic connection. It had been painful, messy, and far from the neat resolution I might have imagined, but it had been necessary. Not just for my vindication, but for the health of our entire family system. As I looked around the table at these familiar yet changed faces, I felt something I hadn't expected: peace. Not the complete absence of pain or the erasing of what had happened, but a quiet acceptance of the past and cautious hope for the future. The truth had indeed set me free, not by magically healing all wounds, but by creating space for genuine healing to begin. Have you ever had to stand up for your truth when everyone doubted you? How did you find the strength to keep going? Share your story in the comments below. And if this video resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone. Sometimes, the hardest battles are fought within our own families. But standing in your truth is always worth it in the end. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, the truth may take time, but it always finds its way to the light.